You can quit pretending you're part of this family. We're done carrying you. That's what my parents told me at a family meeting, while I was the one carrying them. So, I ended every payment. Their house? Foreclosure? My brother's business? Collapsed. Their empire? Gone. Hey Reddit, ever wondered what happens when the quiet, dependable kid in the family finally decides he's done being the free safety net? Let's just say 15 years of being treated like the invisible one came to a very sudden, very permanent stop. And watching the fallout was something else. If you ever want to know what it feels like to grow up as the family's backup option, just ask me. William, 35 male, was basically the spare tire they kept in the trunk. Useful when something went flat, but otherwise out of sight and definitely not getting polished up like the shiny rims. My younger brother Owen? He was the car they drove around to show off. I was just there to make sure they didn't get stranded. When Owen turned 10, he got a full-blown party at the bowling alley. Friends, balloons, custom cake with some cartoon character on it. The works. I still remember because I was the one Mom asked to help haul the sodas inside like I was staff. When I turned 10, I got a happy birthday card left on the kitchen counter before school. No cake, no candles, no family photos. Just a card with a crooked signature and Mom saying, "You're so mature, you don't need all that fuss." Translation: you're not worth the effort, but let's spin it like it's a compliment. The best part? They acted like it was all totally normal. If anyone pointed it out, they had ready-made excuses. Mom would smile and say, "William is independent. He doesn't need us to hand him things." Dad would nod like a background extra and add, "That's just who he is. Self-sufficient." They made it sound noble, like I'd chosen to be overlooked. Like I'd walked into the store, saw the aisle for parental attention and went, "Nah, I'll just grab independence instead." The sarcasm started early for me. I think it was survival. When you're the family's unpaid intern, you either laugh at it or go nuts. By middle school, I was already making jokes to myself like, "Wow, guess who's catering Owen's birthday again?" Oh, right, me. At least interns eventually get hired full-time. I was just stuck on the free labor for life plan. And every time I raised an eyebrow or looked less than thrilled, they'd pull the "you should be grateful" card. That was their favorite line. Be grateful. Be grateful you're healthy. Be grateful you've got a roof over your head. Be grateful you're not Owen, while simultaneously giving Owen everything. It was like they were running two completely different parenting playbooks under the same roof. What really cracked me up, though, was how they used my silence against me. I wasn't a loud kid. I didn't throw tantrums or whine, which they took as proof that I was fine. William just handles his own problems. Yeah, because if I didn't, nobody else would. You don't exactly have the luxury of being a loud, needy kid when you know you're not the priority. But the thing about growing up that way is you start building this thick skin. At first, I thought that was a good thing. Like, maybe I really was independent. Maybe being ignored was secretly making me stronger. But nah, what it really did was train me to accept scraps, to nod along when they treated me like I was optional, to believe that my role was to show up, keep quiet, and handle things myself. And of course, Owen ate it up. Why wouldn't he? He was the star of the show. He grew up thinking the world owed him applause just for existing. If he forgot his homework, it was, "Poor Owen, he's under so much pressure." If I forgot mine, it was, "William, you're slacking." By the time we were teenagers, Owen was the golden child, and I was the family's unpaid life coach. The worst part is, I didn't even fight it back then. I just let it happen. I bought into the story they were selling. I told myself, maybe they're right. Maybe this is just how it works. So I leaned into the role. Quiet, dependable, invisible. If Owen was the show pony, I was the mule dragging the cart in the background. Nobody claps for the mule. Looking back now, it's funny in a messed up way. They built Owen up so high, but all it did was make him entitled and useless. Meanwhile, they kept telling me I didn't need anything. And eventually, I started believing it. Like I should be proud of being the family's safety net. As if that was some kind of honor instead of a giant red flag. I didn't know it yet, but that pattern, me giving, them taking, me being invisible, wasn't just a phase of childhood. It was the blueprint for the next 20 years of my life. By the time I hit 25, I had a steady job and enough income that my parents saw me less as a son and more as a credit line with legs. It started small. Can you cover this utility bill until Friday? But it grew fast. Within a year, I was handling more of their bills than they were. The first big one was the mortgage. Dad's business had another rough patch, which basically meant he was losing clients because he never adapted to anything past 1995. The bank sent a foreclosure notice. I was the one who stayed up all night on the phone with their lender, rearranging my own savings, wiring money to stop them from getting tossed out on the street. That wasn't a dramatic exaggeration either. They had less than 3 weeks before the house was gone. The next morning, I walked into their kitchen like some kind of hero. They were all smiles, telling me how much they appreciated me. Mom even teared up a little. For a second, I thought maybe things would change. Maybe they'd actually treat me like I mattered. Spoiler: by dinner, Owen was bragging about how he'd found a new girlfriend, and everyone forgot I'd just saved their roof. My role was clear: quietly fix things, then fade into the background. Mom had her turn too. She slipped on ice one winter and racked up a stack of medical bills insurance didn't cover. I was the one who quietly set up payment plans, shifted money around, and covered the gaps. Every month I made sure her account didn't go red. She never once asked how I managed it, just assumed it would happen because I always figure it out. The most brutal save came at 30, another foreclosure scare. Dad's business dipped again. They'd missed property tax payments for 2 years straight, and the county was about to seize the house. I had to drop nearly $20,000 between my savings and a personal loan to pull them out of the fire. Without me, they would have been packing boxes and moving into Owen's one-bedroom apartment, which, let's be real, would have lasted about a week before he started pawning their stuff. Part of that deal meant putting my name on the title and co-signing the note. I didn't brag about it at the time, but it gave me real leverage if things ever went south again. And how did they react? For about a week, they acted like I was Superman. Thank yous every day, Mom cooking me dinners, Dad shaking my hand like we'd just closed a business deal. Owen even managed a "thanks, bro." I thought maybe that was it. Maybe this was when I'd finally get some respect. But by the next holiday season, we were back to normal. Owen unwrapping expensive gadgets, me getting a generic card. Gratitude had an expiration date in that house, usually about 7 days. I got smarter about it, though. I started keeping records. Bank statements, receipts, every wire transfer. I wasn't planning revenge back then, but I wanted proof. Somewhere deep down, I knew they'd never give me credit unless I could shove it in their face one day. The cycle never ended. By 32, I was juggling their car insurance, health insurance, property taxes, and still dealing with Owen's failed ventures. And he'd pitch ideas to the family like he was on Shark Tank, but the only investor was me, and I wasn't even asked, just cornered. Dad would say, "You know your brother just needs a chance." Mom would guilt trip me with, "Family helps family." Funny how family always meant me writing checks. Nobody ever said, "Family shows gratitude," or "Family doesn't dump their problems on one kid." I became their safety net by default. If they fell, I caught them. If they stumbled, I picked them up. They weren't surviving because of their choices. They were surviving because I refused to let them crash. And they had the audacity to act like it was owed to them, like I'd signed some invisible contract at birth. William will cover everything while Owen gets to live like a prince. By 35, I wasn't just a fixer. I was running an entire system. Automatic transfers to keep their utilities on. Direct deposits into their business account to cover overdrafts. Car payments set up on my cards. I had spreadsheets layered with reminders for bills that weren't even mine. But the funny part? They still painted me as the independent one. The one who didn't need attention or support. The invisible son. Meanwhile, they were standing on the foundation I built, pretending they'd done it themselves. They weren't grateful. They were comfortable. And comfort made them blind. They didn't see me as family anymore. They saw me as insurance. And like all insurance, they assumed I'd just keep paying until the end of time. That's what made the so-called family meeting sting. Everyone was invited except me. I didn't find out from my parents, or Owen, or even Aunt Kimberly. Nope. I found out because my cousin Tyler texted me, asking if I'd be at the big talk on Saturday. "The what?" I replied. He sent back, "Family meeting. Your mom said everyone has to be there." Then, a few minutes later, "Wait, you weren't told." Classic. So yeah, Saturday evening rolled around, and instead of sitting in my apartment reviewing bills like I usually did, I drove over to my parents' place. I didn't even bother announcing I was coming. If they wanted to exclude me, fine, but I wasn't about to let them sit around and plot whatever without hearing it myself. I parked across the street, watched the driveway stacked with cars, Owen's shiny toy, Dad's truck, Katie's sedan, even Aunt Kimberly's rental parked like she owned the place. I walked in through the side door like I'd done 100 times before. Nobody noticed at first. They were too busy talking. The dining room was packed. Owen leaned back in his chair with that smug grin he always wore when he thought he had an audience. Katie sat beside him, nodding like his personal cheerleader. Mom had her hands folded. Dad looked serious like he was chairing a board meeting. and Aunt Kimberly's voice carried through the laptop speaker from across the country. And what were they talking about? Me. He thinks he's better than us, Owen was saying. Every time he comes around, he's just judging. Katie piped up, honestly, I don't even know why he bothers showing up at holidays. He sits there like he's above it all. Dad chimed in, we've been too generous for too long. Some people never learn their place. Mom's voice calm but cutting. That's the problem. He doesn't know his place. Always so quiet, like he's keeping score. I'm tired of it. They still hadn't noticed me leaning against the doorway. I let them go on. I wanted to hear it raw, unfiltered. Aunt Kimberly's voice echoed from the laptop. You've all been patient. Honestly, I don't know how you've put up with him this long. That one made me laugh. Out loud. Everyone's head snapped toward me at once. You'd think I'd just risen from the dead. Owen blinked first. What the hell are you doing here? I walked in, pulled out a chair, and sat down like I'd been invited. Well, Ty mentioned the big family meeting. Didn't want to miss the roast, considering I'm the guest of honor. They all froze for a second, but then something unexpected happened. They just kept going. Mom leaned forward, her eyes narrowed. You weren't supposed to be here. Yeah, I figured that out, I said. Don't worry, I've been listening. Real touching stuff. Judgy. Quiet. Doesn't know my place. Keep going. I'm taking notes. Owen snorted. See? This is exactly what I mean. He thinks everything's a joke. Katie crossed her arms. It's exhausting having someone like him around. Always making us feel small. Correction, I said, leaning back in my chair. I don't make you feel small. You just are. That earned me a glare from Dad. But nobody had a comeback. For a second, I thought maybe they'd backtrack. Instead, Mom doubled down. You're not welcome here, she said, each word clipped and deliberate. You can quit pretending you're part of this family. We're done carrying you. It got quiet after that. Not awkward quiet, final quiet. The kind of silence where everyone else already agrees and nobody's going to step in. Aunt Kimberly even nodded from the screen like Mom had just delivered a sermon worth clapping for. Owen smirked. Katie looked satisfied, like this was the moment she'd been waiting for. Dad didn't say a word, but his crossed arms said enough. So that was it. Years of keeping them afloat, and I was out. Excommunicated from the people I'd basically been keeping alive. I didn't flinch, didn't beg, didn't raise my voice. I just smiled. Cool, then I'll end every payment tonight. Owen laughed, like I'd just said the dumbest thing in the world. Yeah, sure. You're not going to do that. Dad grumbled. Stop being dramatic, William. Katie rolled her eyes. There he goes again. Even Aunt Kimberly muttered, he's bluffing. I stood up, pushed the chair back neatly into place, and looked around the table. You all think I'm bluffing? That's cute. Guess we'll see how much you enjoy life without your personal insurance policy. Nobody tried to stop me. Nobody apologized. They just sat there with their smug little faces, convinced they'd put me in my place. I walked out calm, collected, not even a raised heartbeat. The front door clicked shut behind me, and for the first time in years, I realized something. This was the last time I was leaving their house on their terms. Next time, it would be mine. They thought they'd just cut me off, but what they really did was cut themselves loose from the one person who'd been holding everything together. I got home, kicked off my shoes, and sat down at my desk. No pacing, no shaky hands, no, should I really do this? Moment. Just me, my laptop, and 15 years of their mess neatly organized in folders. They wanted me gone? Perfect. Time to give them exactly what they asked for. I started small, like pulling bricks out of the bottom of a wall just to watch it wobble. Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, click, cancel, confirm. Owen would be the first one screaming when his playlist cut off mid-bench press. Mom, too, when her shows stopped streaming. Petty? Maybe, but it felt damn good to start light. Then I moved up the chain. Memberships. Premium apps they probably forgot they even had. All under my name, all funded by me. 3 clicks each and done. Little luxuries they'd never realize I'd been covering until they disappeared. The medium stuff came next. Utilities, electricity, water, gas. I'd been the backup payment method for years. The invisible hero whenever their account accidentally ran dry. Not anymore. I pulled my cards off every system. No backup, no failsafe. Next time the lights flickered, it wouldn't be my money bringing them back. Then the real surgery began. Health insurance next. Owen was the only one actually on a plan I controlled. I'd been carrying him on a family plan through my job because he never set up his own. I submitted the removal and killed the plan I was paying for, so his coverage ends on the earliest date the plan allows. My parents weren't on my plan at all. I was just the card on file for their separate policies. I yanked my payment info and let the carriers send their lapse notices. If they want coverage, they can pay for it. Car insurance was next. I wasn't the named insured on their vehicles. I was just the card on file for the payments, plus co-signer on Owen's little sports car. I pulled my payment info off every account. Within 24 hours, the lapse notices started rolling in. Hope Owen enjoyed his late-night drives, because the next one might come with a ticket. I'd also been paying their homeowner's insurance without even thinking about it. Pulled my card off that too. The lender instantly forced a stupidly expensive policy on them and flagged the account as high risk. That kind of red flag makes mortgage companies real twitchy, and I knew it would come back to bite them fast. Property taxes, my personal favorite. For 6 years, I'd been quietly covering those payments through escrow, so they wouldn't lose the house. They were already delinquent, so as soon as I canceled my auto pay, the county's pre-foreclosure notice hit the mailbox in the next cycle. I sent the confirmation to my personal email, leaned back in my chair, and smiled. That house wasn't standing on their discipline. It was standing on my money, and without it, they were basically squatting. Then came Owen's pride and joy, his business, or, as I like to call it, Ask William Incorporated. He had a line of credit with the bank, guaranteed by me. Without my signature, he never would have qualified. I called the bank and told them I wasn't re-upping my personal guarantee when the line came up for review. Without me backing it, they froze the account until Owen could cough up collateral. He couldn't, of course. By the next morning, his business card was just a piece of plastic. I wasn't finished. Oh no. See, Owen had been sneaky. Over the years, I'd noticed accounts with my name linked where I never remembered signing anything. So I dug deeper, pulled my credit report, and there it was. 2 small loans taken out in my name. Owen had forged the applications, sloppy copies of my signature and all. Idiot thought I'd never notice because I was already paying for everything else. I saved the documents, flagged them, and filed police and FTC reports the same night. Slapped fraud alerts on all 3 bureaus so anything tied to my name pings me instantly. Those loans aren't sticking to me. They're coming off his hide. I dropped the files into a neat folder labeled Fraud Owen. That would come in handy later. The clock hit midnight, and I sat there surrounded by confirmation emails, cancellation numbers, and PDFs. To anyone else, it might have looked like chaos. To me, it was art. Years of being their safety net dismantled piece by piece. I didn't just cut them off. I carved them open and showed them how much of their comfort had been stitched together by me. At 2:43 a.m., my phone lit up. Owen calling. Declined. Then again. And again. 19 missed calls in under 5 minutes. On the 20th, I answered. "What the hell did you do?" he screamed. "Exactly what I said I'd do," I replied, calm as ever. "The business account's frozen. My card's declined. My car insurance just sent a lapse notice." "Sounds like you've got problems to solve," I said. "You can't just cut us off like this. We're family." That word again. Family. The same word they used when they wanted money. The same word they weaponized to exile me. I almost laughed. "Funny," I said. "According to last night's little meeting, we're done. Remember? You took it wrong," he snapped. "We were just frustrated." "Frustrated? You spent 20 minutes trashing me in front of the whole family and then kicked me out. If that's frustration, I'd hate to see what hatred looks like." He went quiet, scrambling for excuses. I let him flail before I delivered the kill shot. "Owen, you've had 15 years to figure your life out. Instead, you figured out how to drain me dry. That ends tonight." Then I hung up. The phone lit up again immediately. I powered it off, leaned back in my chair, and enjoyed the silence. For the first time in my life, it was my silence, not theirs. They thought I wouldn't do it, that I'd fold like always. But by the time the sun came up, the safety net was gone, and they were free-falling, and I wasn't going to catch them this time. By morning, I had a neat little banker's box packed. Photocopies of deeds, business documents, loan agreements, every receipt that proved how deep my fingerprints were on their so-called independence. The originals? Locked away where they couldn't touch them. The copies? Props for the performance I was about to deliver. I drove over around 10. The neighborhood looked the same as always. Kids riding bikes, lawns freshly watered. But the house I'd been bankrolling for years looked different. The blinds were drawn, the driveway half empty, and the front door cracked open like they'd been pacing all morning. Owen answered before I even knocked. He looked wrecked. Red eyes, messy hair, the expression of a man who'd spent all night trying to Google how to unfreeze a business account without collateral. "Thank God you're here," he blurted. "Relax," I said, stepping past him. "I'm not here to save you. I'm here to show you what saving you looked like. The living room was a scene straight out of Panic Mode. Papers everywhere. The family safe stood wide open, its guts spilled across the coffee table. Bank statements, insurance policies, car loan papers. It looked like they'd been trying to piece together their finances without a clue where to start. Mom sat stiff on the couch, arms folded tight, while Dad hunched over a folder, flipping pages like the answers might magically appear. The house deed isn't here, Dad said without looking up. The investment accounts are missing too, Mom added, her voice sharp, panicked, but trying to sound controlled. Yeah, I said, setting the banker's box on the dining table. That paper you're looking for is just a copy. Title lives with the county, and my name's on it right alongside yours. I've already handled the part that matters. They all froze. Owen shut the door behind me and turned like a kid caught cheating on a test. What do you mean you handled them? I opened the box and pulled out a thick stack of papers. For everything else, these are copies. The originals are somewhere safe, nowhere you get access without me. Dad shot up to his feet, his businessman mask cracking. You can't hold our property hostage. Your property? I asked, holding up the house deed copy. My name sat right there, listed as co-owner on the title and co-signer on the note. This house exists because I've been paying the taxes for 6 years. Without me, you'd have lost it twice already. So remind me again, whose property is it? The silence hit like a slap. I laid another document on the table, the incorporation papers for Owen's business, my name listed as co-owner after the last bailout. On top of that, I was the only signatory on the operating account. Without me, the bank wouldn't release a single dollar. This company that's bleeding cash? It's tied to me, not you. Then another, the investment account statements. They always called them family investments, bragging about them at barbecues like they were masterminds. But the accounts were in my name only. My social security number printed right there. The only thing they ever contributed was cashing in on the returns. And another, the life insurance policies. I didn't just pay the premiums, I owned the policies outright. My name was on the paperwork, which meant I could change beneficiaries anytime I felt like it. Even their so-called safety net wasn't theirs. It ran straight through me. Each page landed on the table like evidence in a trial. By the time I was done, the dining table looked like an exhibit hall. 15 years of me carrying them, laid out in black and white. Owen picked up one of the papers, his hand trembling. The business loan guarantee. This says you're the primary. Exactly, I said. Which means when the bank comes calling about that $2,400 balance, they'll call me, just like they always do. Dad's face went red, the shade that usually came before one of his angry speeches. You're going to destroy this family over hurt feelings? I laughed. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just stepping back. The collapse? That's on you. You built a house of cards on my back and convinced yourselves it was solid ground. Mom tried the guilt trip route. William, honey, we were upset. Families say things they don't mean. Really? I asked, pulling the printout of last night's group chat from the box and slapping it on top of the pile. Mom's words glared up at her. Don't bother visiting anymore. We're done with you. Aunt Kimberly's little red heart reaction sat right beside it. That doesn't look like we didn't mean it. That looks like you meant every word. Owen's voice cracked. We were just upset. Upset? I cut him off. Upset is burning dinner. This was an ambush. You all lined up to take shots at the one person who kept the lights on, the cars insured, the house from getting seized. And then you told me I was done. Well, congratulations. You finally got what you wanted. I started gathering the papers back into the box, neat and deliberate. Where are you going? Mom asked, her voice suddenly small. To see a lawyer, I said. These documents need to be properly transferred or terminated. Depending on what I decide, you'll either find yourselves with actual responsibilities for once, or with nothing at all. Dad barked, You can't do this to us. I paused at the doorframe, looked back at the 3 people who'd spent 15 years teaching me that love was conditional. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm finally doing something for me. The click of the front door closing behind me sounded different this time. Lighter, final. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking out burdened with their problems stuffed in my pockets. I wasn't planning on wiring money the moment I got home. I wasn't bracing for the next call. I was done. And as much as they wanted to believe I was bluffing, life has a way of teaching lessons real quick when the safety net's gone. The first crack came with Owen's business. By the second week, it was circling the drain. Without my guarantee, the bank froze his credit line, and suppliers stopped extending him deals. One of his bigger clients demanded immediate payment on overdue invoices, and Owen had nothing. He'd built his entrepreneur empire on my collateral, and once that was gone, it collapsed like a tent in the wind. I didn't hear it from Owen, of course. I heard it through mutuals, one of his old college buddies who thought it was hilarious. Man, your brother's business is toast. Dude's been calling everyone for loans. I just shrugged. Guess he should have called the family bank, I said, and left it at that. Next came the house. Without me covering property taxes, the county sent a notice. Pre-foreclosure proceedings. Dad tried to juggle it, but when their mortgage company got wind of the insurance lapse on top of it, they accelerated the timeline. One domino hit the next, and suddenly the house they always bragged about, the house they said was their pride, their legacy, was under threat of being taken. That's when the tone of their calls started changing. At first, they were angry. Voicemails full of barking. You can't just walk away from family. Do you know what you've done? But when the bills piled higher and reality set in, the anger melted into pleading. Mom's voice one night, William, this is getting out of hand. We're drowning here. Please, can you help us just this once? We'll figure it out after. I didn't call back. Then came Owen's fiancée, Katie. She lasted about as long as a goldfish in the desert. As soon as she realized her future wasn't with some big-shot entrepreneur, but with a broke man-child whose entire business model was leech off my brother, she bailed, packed her stuff, cut the ring off her finger, and went back to her parents' house. Owen tried spinning it like he dumped her, but word gets around. Everyone knew she left once she saw the financial mess. I'd be lying if I said that part didn't feel especially sweet. For years, she looked down her nose at me, making little digs about how I was quiet or awkward. Turns out the awkward one was the guy keeping her car insured and her gym membership active. Without me, she realized she'd hitched herself to a sinking ship. And then there was Aunt Kimberly, the same one who'd clicked the little heart reaction when Mom said they were done with me. She suddenly developed selective amnesia, texted me saying, William, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Your parents are really struggling right now. You've always been the good one who helps when family's in need. I know you wouldn't want them to lose everything. Oh, now it was a misunderstanding? Funny, because I distinctly remembered reading her name under that red heart right after Mom told me not to bother visiting anymore. I didn't reply. I screenshotted her message, though. It went in the receipts folder with everything else. The best part of all this wasn't just watching the collapse. It was how desperate they got. Owen started pawning his toys. First the electronics, then the sports car he'd worshipped like it was holy. Mom apparently tried calling distant cousins to borrow money, but word had already gotten out. Nobody wanted to touch their mess. Dad, for all his bluster, was reduced to calling me at weird hours, leaving voicemails where you could hear the defeat in his voice. William, we need to talk, he said once. We'll make you a partner in the business. You deserve it. We should have done that years ago. Partner? In a dead company with no credit and no clients? That wasn't an offer. That was a con. I deleted the voicemail. Meanwhile, my life was the calmest it had ever been. Weekends were mine. I woke up without 20 texts about bills. I could check my bank account without watching half of it bleed out to cover their chaos. I started hiking trails I'd been putting off, took a trip out of state, bought things for myself without guilt. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, it was just peace. And peace felt like winning. I knew some people would probably expect me to feel guilty, like cutting off your parents and brother is some cold-hearted move. But when you've spent years being treated as a wallet with legs, guilt doesn't even register. All I felt was clarity. The longer I stayed silent, the more desperate they became. Mom tried guilt-tripping me with health stuff. I've been feeling sick. It's stress. This is on you. Classic manipulation. They'd never been above twisting the knife, so that didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was how little it affected me this time. I just rolled my eyes. Maybe try paying a doctor instead of me. Then came the smear attempt. Aunt Kimberly, bless her delusional heart, started telling extended family that I'd abandoned my parents, that I'd always been selfish. Too bad for her, I had 15 years of records, screenshots, bank statements, wire transfers, all neatly organized. I dropped a few into the family group chat with a single message. Funny how the selfish one paid $250,000 while the rest of you sat around. Silence. Not one response. Not even a thumbs up. By the end of the third week, their empire of entitlement had crumbled. Owen's business gone. The house hanging by a thread. Katie out of the picture. Kimberly humiliated. And my parents? Reduced to begging the son they'd told to never come back. For me, it was simple math. I'd given them 15 years. 15 years of covering, fixing, and sacrificing. They gave me nothing but scraps, judgment, and finally exile. They ended it. I just enforced the terms. and watching them unravel without me? That was the kind of satisfaction you don't put a price tag on. 3 weeks later, my life didn't just look different. It felt different. I'd gone under contract on a house across town, a small place with a yard and a garage, and the closing date was set a few weeks out. While the paperwork churned, I finally took the vacation I'd been postponing for years. Iceland. By the time I got back, the keys were waiting, and I moved into a place that was actually mine. Meanwhile, their downfall just kept rolling downhill. Owen tried to reinvent himself as some kind of consultant, but nobody was buying advice from a guy whose last business ended in foreclosure. Mom and Dad scrambled with the bank, but without my payments, the house was in pre-foreclosure limbo. Aunt Kimberly? She stopped running her mouth after I dropped receipts in the group chat. She went radio silent, which honestly was a blessing. The attempts to reel me back in didn't stop, though. They shifted tactics. First, the guilt. We're family, William. We can fix this. Then the bargaining. Dad offering me a partnership in a business that no longer existed. Then the desperation. Voicemails saying things like, just until we get back on our feet. They still didn't get it. There was no back on their feet. Their entire balance had been me. Without me, they weren't standing. They were crawling. The real test came one Saturday afternoon. I was in my new backyard, putting together a grill when a car pulled up out front. I looked through the fence slats and saw them, Dad and Owen, standing there like salesmen, about to pitch me something. I didn't open the gate. I let them stew a minute before I walked out, wiping my hands on a rag. William, we need to talk, Dad started, his voice thinner than I'd ever heard it. Owen jumped in, his tone more pleading than I thought he was capable of. Look, man, we messed up. We shouldn't have said what we said. We need your help. Just help us get back on track. I leaned against the fence, crossed my arms, and let them sweat. You two told me I was done. Don't bother visiting. Remember that part? Dad sighed. We were angry. No, I corrected. You were honest. You just didn't like that I finally listened. Owen's voice cracked. Please, just this once. We'll make it right. I almost laughed. You've had 15 years to make it right. You didn't. And now you're here because your gravy train derailed. Dad stepped closer, lowering his voice like it might make me sympathetic. Don't do this, son. You'll regret it. I opened the gate just enough to look him in the eye. No. What I regret is wasting half my life trying to earn a seat at your table. Turns out I was just the waiter bringing food. Well, the waiter quit. Go cook for yourselves. Owen muttered something under his breath, probably an insult, but I cut him off. You're trespassing. Unless you want the cops called, you're leaving now. And their faces dropped, like it hadn't occurred to them I'd actually treat them like any other entitled strangers at my door. Dad tried one last time. We're still your family. Funny, I said. Family doesn't exile their own in group chats. Family doesn't leech $250,000 off one son and call him judgmental. Family doesn't show up only when the ATM shuts down. I shut the gate in their faces and walked back to my grill. A minute later, I heard their car pull away. That was the final goodbye. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel second thoughts. What I felt was free. Free from their demands. Free from being their invisible backbone. Free to actually live. Some bridges aren't worth rebuilding. Some families are better loved from a distance. Mine had shown me exactly where I stood, and for once, I believed them. That night, I sat in my backyard with the grill fired up, steak sizzling, a cold breeze moving through the trees. My phone sat on the table, screen dark, finally silent. For the first time in 15 years, everything I saw, every tool, every brick, every piece of piece, belonged to me, and nobody could take it. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.